Hey guys, welcome back into the Bear With Us podcast. I say back because it's been a little bit, been a little while. Frank said, "You know what? I'm tired of the off season. Let's just can this podcast until they start back up." And I was like, "All right. I mean, I guess if you really want to do that, Frank, I'll join you." Frankie, it's been a minute. How we living, man? How we doing?
It's been a little while, man. Listen, we are full-fledged in on the season. I wasn't the biggest fan of Hard Knocks, but my son watched it with me. He watched all 5 episodes, and he was very amped for it. Obviously, he's 4 years old. It's the first time he's ever watched it, so
Yeah.
it's been the buzz inside the house has been pretty incredible. How's it been with you?
Yeah, my son, he's starting to walk, so he doesn't he's not quite at the concept of breaking down offense, defense, scheme, personnel. He's not quite there. And we're getting him there. But every time Hard Knocks was on, he was asleep. So he clearly didn't really care about it too much. I would have liked to have done, I felt like when the first episode came out, I was like, man, I kind of want to kick back up the pod. Let's talk through some of the Hard Knock stuff. I feel like we might be missing out. And I got to be honest with you. We didn't miss anything.
No, we didn't.
It was so boring.
it was very boring. And obviously, we don't want to hamper too much. We got quite a bit to get to. But I really thought, and maybe I let myself down, I thought they'd get away from the formula a little bit of the undrafted guy. There's stars here, man. There's Montez Sweat on the other side of the ball. There's Tremaine Edmonds on the other side of the ball. There's obviously Caleb Williams. People were talking about he's the best quarterback prospect since Andrew Luck. Let's really lean in here. I mean, obviously, DJ Moore and Keenan Allen and Cole Kmet and Roma Dunze, another top 10 pick. Let's lean into the stars, and they just did not do that. I don't care about the Canadian center, man. What are we doing here?
He didn't even play. I don't even think we saw him in game action.
Well, he did because he got hurt on that special teams play in the preseason. Oh, okay. I think he tore his ACL or something crazy. Yeah.
No, it was weird just seeing the backups again. Man, we get it. The Tyson Bagent stuff it was interesting the first time I heard it. Let's move on here. Real quick, I guess not real quick, because this actually, I think is where we could just start, because we got to talk about Bears victory, man.
We do.
I got myself a nice little Miller High Life right here. Just pounding these down during the game. This episode isn't sponsored by Miller, but if it could be. We're open. We're not picky.
No, not at all.
Frank, victory tastes good. 24-17 Bears. First victory of the season. You may hear 24 points. You're like, oh, okay, maybe Caleb was cooking a little bit. No. And that's where we're going to start this conversation. Caleb's debut, first game in the NFL, first game with the Bears, real live game action. The stat line, 14 completions to 29 attempts for 93 yards. No touchdowns, no interceptions, no fumbles. Frankie, it's not pretty. You're just looking at the box score. Is this what should Bears fans take away from this? What did you take away from this debut from the number 1 pick?
Yeah, it wasn't pretty if you just actually watch the game as well. I think it's completely okay for Bears fans, us included, to be a little disappointed in this debut. The biggest thing, the total offense just didn't look in sync. It looked bad on everyone's part. So it wasn't just Caleb, but isolating Caleb, because that's going to be the biggest talking point of the year, obviously. He was just very inaccurate in a way that I don't think any of us anticipated him being. He had some ducks out there. He had some time. And it wasn't I feel like on the scale of I would have felt a little better if it was just guys on not on the same page. It's option routes that aren't just really hitting. He was just kind of missing. His ball placement was bad on a lot of throws, and it didn't seem like a timing thing. It just felt like maybe the moment was a tad bit too big for him. But we can go on and on about how bad of a game it was for him or the rest of the offense, especially the offensive line, which we'll get to. But at the end of the day, it is one game with a rookie quarterback. Someone put out a tweet, and I forgot who it was, but this is really my grand takeaway of it all, to be honest. The Bears made every single mistake that they could. The Bears played as bad as you could on offense and still came out with the win. We know that. This isn't even the floor. This is just you throw this in the garbage can and you instill no place from this game. Exactly. This is the basement and it is what it is. So I don't, any way that you felt about Caleb Williams going into the season, excuse me, you should not feel differently now. I mean, are you in the same boat with that?
Yeah, I think there was a lot of, typical Bears old head pessimism, even from some new fans. Obviously, had non-Bears fans more than ready to dunk on Caleb Williams just for the personality, which I feel like if people watched Hard Knocks, I feel like it maybe it changed some people's opinions on him. I know like a lot. You and I had talked about it a little bit during Hard Knocks. Caleb's dad was like built up to be this like LeVar Ball type guy, and we heard more from Tyson Bagent's dad. We saw more about him arm wrestling guys, and we didn't even see Caleb Williams' dad on the entire thing. So I think people were maybe ready to just dunk on him because they just don't like him. Maybe they didn't like him in college. Maybe they thought the hype was a little bit overrated for Caleb, which I think from a game perspective, there's if you feel that way, great. I think what you saw and will continue to see is Caleb being able to get a little bit more comfortable. He's never thrown to any of these guys before. It's not like, I think of like Andrew Luck was the first overall pick in 2012. In the second round, the Colts take Coby Fleener. And maybe that's a little bit high for a guy like Coby Fleener, but they were like, let's get Andrew a target he's comfortable with. Let's get him one of his guys. There really wasn't like one of those dudes to get for Caleb that would even really be able to make like an impact. You think of a guy like Brendan Rice, he was like a 7th round pick. So, I mean, sure, they could have drafted him in the 7th round if they had a 7th round pick, but he wouldn't be starting. He wouldn't be playing. There wasn't one of those high end guys. And really, overall, it just makes me think Caleb is going to adapt pretty quick to this offense because he's not going to have to do everything. And that's proven from this game. He didn't have to do anything insane for them to get a win. Now, he didn't literally do, he didn't have a very good game. There's really no way to spin that. It was a bad game. It was not a great debut. But, one thing I just kept going back to in the debuts of Mitch and Justin Fields, a lot of people were bringing up Justin because he was playing on Sunday in Atlanta and he got the win for his team, also not scoring an offensive touchdown. But I just think about, like, I was watching that game and it's just Caleb staying in the pocket. Anytime he would have to get out of the pocket, he was always looking to throw. He never just ran to run. Everything felt deliberate. And I just was looking at like certain throws that he would make or decisions, and I was like, I feel like Justin would have had a turnover there. Like, and not that it's Justin's fault. Sometimes some of those were just bad luck things where you and I were just like last year, like, why does this keep happening? And I just feel like Caleb got away with some of that stuff for whatever reason. But I mean, ultimately at the end of the day, he didn't turn the ball over. And I think if you're looking for any sort of positive with Caleb's debut, I think it's that right there.
It's very funny that you say that because I was going to end the offensive segment with what, like, if you had one positive, because there weren't very many, if any at all, what would it be? That's my positive, is he didn't turn the ball over. Now, granted, one of them was a little lucky, that sort of ricocheted ball, fumble, whole thing. I mean, that was one of the wilder plays of the day. But that, like, all of what you explained just shows you how advanced he is as a prospect than anyone we've had before. And it's not to act like he had a bad game. It's a bad game. Well, one of the tweets that I bookmarked from Patrick Finley, Caleb Williams' 55.7 passer rating is the 11th worst debut. But as the positive spin here, John Elway had a 0.0. Caleb's was 55.7, by the way. Terry Bradshaw, 19.3. Matt Stafford, 27.4. I think you get where we're going. Eli Manning, 45.1. These are Hall of Famers. These are some Hall of Fame guys. Now, granted, some guys on the list are probably much worse than that. I think they isolated the really good ones. All to say, usually the first game doesn't really mean anything. I mean, Andrew Luck's first game was against the Bears, turned the ball over about 4 times. Like it is,
that dude was slinging it that day.
Yeah, I mean, it is what it is. And really, if I have another big takeaway from the offense, and I think we give the offensive line its own segment here before we even go to defense. But before we get to them, is I left being like, man, it felt good to watch a game, as ugly as it may have been, not called by Luke Getsy, because. No, I'm serious. As weird as this sounds, like the offense, it felt there was a lot more common sense stuff happening. We didn't see
Stuff that we
game.
were asking for.
Yeah, exactly. Now, were there some things, that I thought I wanted maybe a few more crossing pattern, but I mean, there was a handful of slant routes. When's the last time we've seen that in a Chicago Bears game, if ever, in our lifetime? Like, that's where the timing and things that Caleb and the guys will get better with. But a few of those things, he just slung them in there, and I'm like, oh man, I mean, this looks like Aaron Rodgers to, Jennings, or just someone that we just, all our life just watch this guy tear us up. Like, it looked good, but. It's you can see the game plan there. And it was weird that there were some people complaining about his game plan, but there were just some plays that Caleb just straight up missed. That wide open Keenan Allen throw completely changes the scope of that drive and probably that whole first half. The Keenan drop completely, blows up what you think of how this game went. Like, there were just things that happened and it's like, that's not the OC, baby. That's execution. And if they start executing, I like what Shane Waldron was doing. So that was one thing that I did want to make sure that I highlighted.
Yeah, I thought the game plan was good. And again, I don't want this to be completely sunshine and rainbows about Caleb and us just trying to look for anything to be excited about. I think we should make it very clear that we're not happy about this debut.
No.
Like, it's not what we were sold on the first pick. This isn't what we expected to come into. Caleb missed a lot of throws. He did. And if I have concern, it's that we saw some of that in the preseason as well. Now, I'm not going to get too crazy. Preseason is totally different, but we did see some of those inaccurate throws pop up, and some of the misses that he had, like that deep ball to Keenan, he had him for at least, if not a touchdown, a deep, long completion. It wasn't close. And that's what was a little bit concerning for me. And I'm going to take it with a grain of salt. First NFL game at home. Crowd is going insane. He says he wasn't nervous. Eberflus says he wasn't nervous. Come on. It's okay. It's all right. I know he's not going to say it, but I think Bears fans would totally be accepting if he had some nerves. And I think it was just clear because the Caleb Williams we saw on tape makes those throws 9 times out of 10.
But I think the thing is, too, is whether it was nerves or not, the one thing I think he would admit to is he was pressing. He was pressing. Like, so some of those intermediate throws, he was putting a little extra zip on it that I don't think he's had a better touch on some of these throws. Even the wide open stuff, he's just a little in his head. That's all it was.
To your point, though, just in regards to Caleb's debut, overall, I mean, shit, man, there were some drops that maybe make this game a little, that stat line look a little bit better. Keenan Allen, you can't drop that, dude, in the end zone. Help your guy out a little bit. Rome Odunze, who I know we want to talk about a little bit later as well. Just he was shaken up a little bit. I wasn't exactly happy with he didn't look sharp. And I think that's not necessarily to criticize Rome, but I just think it's a good reminder that these dudes are still rookies. It's going to take some time. OTAs, preseason, it's different now. Like there's just not a lot of opportunities out there. And I know, dynasty people love to look at camp tape for any sort of highlights there. We're starved for it. So it's fun to take away a lot of that stuff, but I just think it's a good reminder that things are going to take some time, and it's tough, Frank, because one of the things that we were most excited about with Caleb and this team overall was like, if Caleb is an upgrade from Justin, this is a playoff team.
Yep.
And this isn't a normal situation for Caleb, for like a number 1 overall pick, like we've talked about, where it's like, okay, come in, the team's not ready, just learn at your own pace. Let's see if we can pick things up. It's tough because this team has expectations to win. And Caleb is being put in a position where it's like, yeah, he has a lot of talent around him. Why isn't he performing better? And I think that's where I know that's where my frustration came in for sure. I don't want to speak for every Bears fan, but I think that's where a lot of Bears fans were at, where it's like number 1 overall pick. We've been told a ton about how good this guy is in camp. What the fuck happened in this debut? So it's like, I think that's where the frustration came in.
And it should, because on one hand it should, because this was the replay of every good Bears team that we've ever seen. The offense does nothing. The defense and special team wins the game. And we know that's not how you win a championship. Or even if you do, you sort of have this super dominant, it's not going to be sustained over years upon years where you want your team to continuously get that lottery ticket. But I think on the other hand, a lot of offenses did not look good in week one. And it's something that we talked about a couple years ago, and we were like, man, because like 4 or 5 years ago, I distinctly remember missing week one because I had a training to be a part of at work. And I'm following on my Yahoo app, and it's like everyone's just going nuts. Fucking Miami scoring 60, and this is happening, and Saquon Barkley scoring 7 touchdowns. I'm like, what the fuck is going on? And like, man, have offenses just like caught up? I think that pendulum is totally swung. And I don't know if it's, we tried to diagnose it. Is it OTAs? Is it the lack of preseason reps and things? And or is it just movement of coordinators nonstop and head coaches all the time and new players everywhere, every single year? And then we start to see that thing even out come week 4 and week 5 when that, and I do think the one thing I'm comfortable in sort of speculating is I think it's just because defenses aren't predicated on timing nearly as much as offense. Offenses are sharp. You talk about Rome Odunze not being sharp. That's everyone's offense. It needs to be precise and right on point and right on time. And, week one, it looks sloppy for we saw Lamar Jackson miss some really easy throws that, forget what you think about Lamar as a passer. I know he's not quarterbacky enough for some people, but he makes those throws, right? So it's like, part of me is also just, I'm not going to have any grand conclusions, but I'm not happy about it. That's the one thing I'm glad you've continued to highlight is like, we're not being all peaches and roses, like, oh yeah, 95 yards and no offensive. We're okay. Like, no, this could be worrisome, but at the end of the day, it's week one and there's no grand conclusions to be drawn here.
Right. I think I just want to draw a line in the sand and say it's okay to be disappointed, but it's not okay to overreact and say it's time to start Tyson Bagent, which I haven't seen. I haven't seen any of that. I was surprised. I was more surprised than anything. I will say I'm glad the Bears won because I think if they didn't, we'd see a lot more of the Justin Field truthers coming back out.
Yeah.
Frankie,
can I just? Are we going defense here, or do you want to talk O-line before we get there?
We need to talk some O-line and the run game in general, because I think it ties into Caleb's debut, because anybody who expected this rookie quarterback to do this all by himself, I think is out of their mind. There were a lot of question marks about this offensive line, especially the interior. You invested a first round pick on Darnell Wright, who has looked very good, very safe player to just assume he'll take care of business. Outside of that, it's been questionable up and down. Braxton Jones, I thought per normal was fine, nothing spectacular. Tevin Jenkins he had a rough game. He had a very, very rough game. The right guard situation, it's clearly a battle that's going on that's carried over from training camp because Ryan Bates got hurt. Him and Nate Davis have been substituting in and out. Matt Eberflus spoke after the game and said that was part of the plan. Part of the game plan was to get those guys both, because they were both coming off injuries throughout the training camp, always dealing with things. So needed to make sure they were healthy. But Frank, we got to talk about the center position, Coleman Shelton. You and I, it's frustrating because it goes back to the draft when you and I were just like, that was one of our key positions was get a center. You can't leave this draft without a center. You have to get one. And Ryan Poles said, no, we're good. We're going to go with Coleman Shelton. Frank, am I being too harsh on the O-line, or do you agree with kind of what I'm talking about here? Was it a rough day for them as well?
I mean, outside of like saying that they're a part of Al-Qaeda, I don't know if you can be too hard on this offensive line. They were that bad. The only one that people are throwing some of these grades out here.
God damn.
People are throwing some of these grades out here from PFF, and it's showing that like they had an okay game. No, they did not. Like dude, that's where like the analytics nerds need to fuck off. Like you can't. Like I know what I'm watching. Like I almost feel like I'm being gaslit by the woke agenda that's telling me that the offensive line played well. Because Darnell Wright was the only one that had himself a game. But you can't be hard enough on them. And the thing with that though is this is a worry that me, that you, that Nas has expressed all off season, whether on record or in our text thread. So this isn't like, Caleb just had a bad game. We still have all this tape on them. We came in like this should be a pretty bad offensive line. Unless we're just missing something. And to top it off, Tav played the worst game I think I've ever seen him play before. He's usually pretty reliable. But so we talked about like not having grand takeaways maybe of Caleb Williams or Rome Odunze or any of the offensive weapons. The one thing that really has me worried in terms of like this could be a huge issue down the road is while the Bills' interior defensive line is pretty good, their edge rushers are not, and their secondary also is not. So this may be not this bad offensively, but just sort of the story of some of these games of like, we're better skill position wise. Can we get this line figured out good enough to actually put up points against people? And we're going to see that, I think, in week 2 against the Texans, which, we'll get to that later in the week. But like the biggest worry here is you can't go out and now get someone on the free agent market or I mean, you can maybe try to trade for someone, but what contender or what good center is out there, at this time of the year? So
what team is going to be selling at this
and what
point,
team exactly
right?
What team's going to be selling? So you're sort of stuck with what you have. So you can't stick with Shelton beyond. Maybe you give him another shot week 2, but we need to either see Doug Kramer in there. I mean, maybe give Tav, Bates, somebody. Something has to give at the center position. You can't just continue to roll it out. And the biggest play of the game for me, it wasn't the play where he got blown up. I know that's been all over social media. To be fair to him, Tav sort of tripped him there. It was all bad. It was a total interior breakdown. But it was the one where he just totally falls for this stunt where their defensive tackle is already being blocked by 2 of our guys, and the DN realizes that the center, Sheldon, is now pulling over as well and leaves this gaping hole. And I don't even think it was a designed stunt. It was just like the defensive man, like, oh, you're giving me this? Cool. And it's like, dude, where is your IQ here? Because right. As a starting NFL center, I don't care how bad you are, Sam Mustipher doesn't make that mistake. You know what I'm saying? Like, this is like the absolute basics of the whole thing. So, yeah, the offensive line was really, really bad, but then that also leads into, which you probably want to touch on as well, because you mentioned it in sort of the intro of it, the run game. We can't get anything established. That was one of our biggest points going into the year of like, not only do we have a good defense for Caleb, we hypothetically should have had a really good run game because I like our running back room. But it didn't matter if you have Walter back there. No one's running behind this offensive line. It was terrible.
Right. And a big part of that is one thing that I think can't be overlooked is now you've taken away an element in Justin Fields, right? So that run game is going to have to be a more traditional run game because Caleb does not run the way that Justin Fields does. And whether you like that, whether you hate that, it is what it is. Look, I know again, the box score, not great. 10 carries, 30 yards for DeAndre Swift. You paid him all that money. He looked better than that. Like, he looked better than 3 yards a carry. Like, he did. He looked good. And it's just, if they're able to create space for him, and I think as Waldron adjusts to his weapons, right? He's never coached any of these guys before besides Gerald Everett, who can't apparently stay off the field. They just got to get him in whenever they can. He'll understand what is best to do, and I think what they're going to have to do is they're going to have to attack the edges a little bit more behind Darnell Wright. Like, you can't run up the middle right now as it currently stands, and if you do, it can't be Travis Homer, it can't be Velus Jones, it can't be Khalil Herbert. How is Roschon Johnson inactive this game?
Okay, can we
go ahead?
I was just going to say, maybe this all meshes together as before we get to the defense and get out of here. Some of the personnel stuff is really throwing me off. And we've texted about this quite a bit, during the game, obviously. Travis Homer last year was essentially only a special teams player, which I was okay with him bringing. He's a good gunner. He's a solid, return guy when we need him to be. Carter may just be taking everyone's job at that point. He looked really good. But,
yeah,
what were those carries to him that I don't like? You think about maximizing people's touches. It's not like Swift was overran here. It's not like he got a ton. Like, you give them to him, or you give them to Roschon, or you give them to even Khalil Herbert. I'm okay with that. Why is Travis Homer getting any reps in the backfield? And I damn near feel
Jones
this way.
Was the second running back who got a carry,
and that's what I was just going to lead to. That also that sentiment extends to Velus Jones, because whatever he does offensively, which again, we can squint and say he's explosive. And we were saying some of this over the last couple of years. Maybe he is, because we called he was a running back before anybody. If people remember, that was our thing. Yep. But nothing he provides offensively offsets how bad he is on special teams. And because he's not a contributing factor there, there's no spot on this roster for him, dude. He's not better than Khalil Herbert. He's not better than Roschon Johnson. He's not, I mean, fuck, he may not be better than Travis Homer because I think what Homer gives you on special teams is better than what Velus does. So maybe Velus is a tad bit better of a runner, but like, what are we doing? And then like we've talked about this too, Blasingame is still in the game. And it's like, you look at teams who utilize the fullback position in today's NFL. It's either they have a power run offense that dude's ready to fucking smack somebody in the hole, or it's Kyle Juszczyk, who's essentially like a hybrid tight end fullback type, like an H-back type. Yeah. Blasingame is neither of those things. Why is he on this team? We don't even have the offensive line makeup for it, even if he was a bruiser at fullback, to be of any use. Some of this personnel decision, and this is all Eberflus here. This is an Eberflus problem. This has been happening since year one, where, you know, we're going on again with this offensive line rotation shit. We're going on again with, like, why is this guy getting these reps here? Why is that? Like, the buck has to eventually stop with Eberflus with these decisions.
Get your best player the football. Get your best players on the field. It's that simple. And DeAndre Swift leaving this game with one target, I think it was, no catches. That's not using your best players. And Cole Kmet, I think had 2 targets,
and he had a catch for 6 yards or something. Yeah, it was
4 yards. Gerald Everett had 1 catch for -1. Like, get your best player. Now, granted, the offense looked like a mess just overall, but I think there were I don't want to get too down on the play calling, because like we said, it's week 1 for everybody. Waldron's going to learn what guys can do, what guys can't do that. The run game has to be better. You have to be able to help out your rookie quarterback, and DeAndre Swift only having 30 yards on the ground and giving the ball to Velus Jones and Roschon Johnson. What I don't understand, and I don't want to get too lost in the weeds, because I do want to touch on the Rome stuff, and I want to get to defense and before we get out of here real quick. I thought Roschon's whole thing was like pass pro.
Yeah.
But Blasingame, they wanted Blasingame in there for that. And he whiffed on a block, and Caleb had Keenan on a really good, like, he had him. And Blasingame misses the block, and the corner is able to get to Caleb and mess up the throw. I just, that part of it, I just don't get why Blasingame is, they cut him and then they bring him back and then he's active week 1.
Yeah. I mean, maybe they thought they saw something with the matchup. I'm willing to give the personnel thing the benefit of the doubt, because they may be, I mean, you're talking about bubble guys here that may be inactive certain weeks, active certain weeks. Roschon, to me, should never be inactive. He's too valuable of a run. Like, I'm not acting like he's, you know.
Well, and they love him. They love him the way they love Velus. Apparently, that's what we were led to believe.
I just don't. What does Velus bring to this team that Roschon does not, to be inactive? Like, to me, the inactive active list should be a revolving door between Travis Homer, Velus Jones, Blasingame. That should be your guys based on whatever little thing you see on the defense that maybe one guy provides a little bit of a spark. Roschon should not be on that list. I vehemently disagree with that decision.
I agree. And we'll keep an eye on that throughout the season. Hopefully this is just a week 1 aberration, and we'll see if that carries on. One thing we do want to touch on, because it could impact who's active and who's not active, Rome Odunze apparently was injured on a play where he got rolled up on by, of course, Velus Jones, because something bad happens. It's always fucking Velus. It's always him involved in some sort of way. Rome, he suffered a grade 1 knee sprain, which I believe is the same thing that Jordan Love is currently going through.
Yep.
Essentially, Jordan Schultz on Twitter said that this is the best case scenario for the talented rookie receiver. So it doesn't sound like he'll miss a ton of time, 1 to 3 weeks. Frank, is there any big takeaway? What is your concern level with Rome potentially? Let's call it worst case scenario. He misses 3 weeks. Is this doomsday? How do you feel about that?
No, I don't think anyone should feel that way. It sucks because you want to get the kid as many reps as you can and targets as you can in year 1, but realistically, he's still wide receiver 3, right? Like, his reps are just determined on what we do next year. Do you re-sign Keenan for another year or 2 to retire here? Do you even maybe think about drafting a mid-round receiver? I don't think anything he does is going to predicate like a full season. He may have some big games sprinkled throughout, but I don't think ever going to be the focal point of this offense this year. So to that degree, now it's just who else can step up. Do they bring up Colin Johnson from the practice squad? Is Tyler Scott a little bit more of, you know, because he's more of an outside guy anyway, with Keenan still being inside. So I don't, you're still losing something because he's very talented, but my panic level isn't anywhere near. If someone is panicking, I think they're a little crazy. How do you feel about it?
I'm a little, I don't want to say I'm worried about Rome's development, but like I said, he wasn't super sharp week 1. So like I want to get him as much exposure to game action as possible. So it stinks. It's not great to lose him for an extended period of time,
Right.
whether it's 1, 2, 3 weeks. But like you said, overall, it's not like Caleb can't. It's not like we're the Giants and this is Malik Neighbors and now we have literally nobody else to throw to. Like, DJ's still here. Keenan is still here. My only concern is Keenan was also shaken up a bit, with a heel injury. So it's like, and Keenan obviously has a history of getting hurt. So it's like, okay, did we just lose Keenan and Rome next week in Houston, which is already going to be a very tough matchup? Like that would suck. That would be rough, especially because the depth isn't that great. Depending on how you feel about Tyler Scott, I know a couple people are a little bit higher on Tyler Scott than maybe a few others are. But yeah, I think Tyler Scott absolutely gets elevated, and hopefully he makes an impact, and we'll see what that looks like. But yeah, that's the news on Rome. Frankie, overall, give me just quick grade on the offense. Like I know it's easy. I know it's easy to just say F, obviously, but is there anything that we should, I know you touched on it, that you wanted to talk a little, just hang your hat on something. And I already took no turnover, so come up with something else.
I think that's it. I think it's just no turnovers, man. There was nothing. Well, no, you know what? I lied. I'll roll with the coordinator. I thought Waldron called a good game. Okay. Again, it was much more on execution than it was OC. I went in the Bears subreddit this morning speaking of that, and they were just going, but like they were acting like it was Luke Getsy, and I'm like, I don't think you all know ball. Because there's no way you left away saying like this was on him at all. That was a total lack of execution on the offense's part. So that leaves me optimistic that this OC, again, because all we want is common sense play calling, and I feel like we got that.
Yeah, we got some slants, we got some play action, a couple things to clean up, but
he schemed people wide the fuck open. Keenan was wide open on that wheel route, like it was there. So that leaves me optimistic.
Yeah,
but it's an F. But the grade is an F.
Yeah, grade's enough for me. Let's flip it to defense. I just obviously an incredible second half. First half, not so great. The rush defense was not very good. One thing that I wanted to focus on before we get to the pass rush stuff is Jalen Johnson. They obviously paid him this offseason. It was a big topic of conversation. Reminded me a little bit of the Allen Robinson days, except I felt that Jalen Johnson deserved to get paid, and he did. Jalen Johnson, man, like he feels like a man who genuinely felt disrespected by the top 100 stuff.
Oh, yep. I agree.
He seems like he's ready to have just an all-pro type season.
Yeah, he played phenomenal, and he just gets paid. He was first team, second team All-Pro last year, whatever. I mean, it was
second.
I think second as well. So, you may be running out of motivations there, but that top 100, I believe him when he says that he took that very, very personal. He's on a mission here. So maybe we got something to worry about motivationally next year, but I don't think we're worrying at all in 2024. He balled. I mean, and Tyreek Stevenson did as well. That whole secondary played very well.
And Jaquan Brisker didn't get shaken up and headed to the blue medical tent. So
no. And he also made some nice hits. I enjoyed his game. He played very well there. But no, I mean, the defense, I mean, you want to look at it in the scope of grades like we just did with the offense. How can you not give them an A, right? I mean, they literally won the game. They literally took over the game when they needed to, and at all levels. I mean, the pass rush started to hit home organically at that. So some of the blitzes, Eberflus's blitz calls were really, really good. Listen, we maybe needed to be talking about Spider-Man. Why am I blanking on that? Kyler Gordon being one of the better slot blitzers in the league. He gets home every fucking time they send that blitz. It is a thing of beauty.
Ooh, I gotta be real with you, man. I love seeing that dude blitz because you just feel like something good is gonna happen. I think I am confirming Jalen Johnson was all pro. It doesn't say if he was.
I thought he was second team. I think you were right.
It doesn't say it on
Football
Reference, but I'm fairly confident he was second team. So
yeah.
But no, Kyler Gordon, man, like it's a good pick. It's a good draft pick. Like it's come full circle, and I really like that dude. I really do.
Same.
And overall, I just like that this team blitzed, and they blitzed smart. They didn't just blitz all game, but when they blitzed, it worked. And a big part of that was Darrell Taylor, the traded player from Seattle. Ryan Poles, he wanted Matthew Judon. The Patriots wanted a third. Judon wanted a contract. Poles said, nah, we're good. Sent a 6th-round pick to Seattle for Darrell Taylor. Darrell Taylor, he had 8 total tackles, I believe, and then 2 sacks with that and that forced fumble, which, again, just made a huge impact on that game. Also, Frankie, Gervon Dexter had a sack as well, his first of the season. Absolutely just destroyed his man for that one. I mean, how are we feeling about the pass rush? Montez Sweat, a little bit more quiet, but you're going to expect that, especially this season, I think, just because teams are going to key in on him. There's really not a lot of other big name guys. Maybe Darrell Taylor helps with that. Maybe Gervon Dexter takes some guys. But overall, how did you feel about the pass rush? Because that was something I would say it was probably interior offensive line, pass rush were the 2 biggest concerns heading into this season overall.
Listen, I thought that and Nas was more in this camp, and we'll get his thoughts whenever he's able to hop on. But I was never worried about this defensive line, especially to the degree that we were on the offensive line. Now, am I worried about depth? Yes, we're worried there, but I had a feeling Dex was going to have a step forward this year. He showed so many flashes last year that you just, and it was his first year fully in a 3-tech. So you just felt like he was going to figure something out. And again, I know Nas's big point is that we're relying a little too much on Sweat, but this is like, it's not like we're just relying on him. We just need these other guys to win their one-on-ones now. There was so many doubles and triples and chip blocks towards him. They paid so much, just like you said, so much attention towards Montez that it's opening up avenues for these other guys. And Taylor may just be the perfect fit for what we needed. So in terms of like adding any sort of help, I hope we don't have to make a midseason trade. I want this to be the nucleus. Now, if injuries happen, then you sort of rewrite that script. But as it stands right now, as a healthy front 4, this is it. I like it. I mean, Billings still, he didn't play as much as I'd like him to. The only player that we've acquired over the last couple of years that I'm probably out on already is Pickens. I don't think he's the one tech for us. But I think Billings comes in and plays well. I think the NASCAR package, when you either shift Montez inside with Dexter and you have Taylor and Walker on the outside, like you got a lot you're working with here, and or Booker, exactly. Like you have a lot to work with here, and I think we're completely okay. I was never worried about it. Now again, injuries happen. I will be because I don't like the depth, but they did what I thought they would do, especially against a Titans team. Now as we start playing better teams, maybe it starts to expose itself. But yeah, it's I have no worries about that D line.
Yeah, I want to see what Pickens looks like when he's back healthy. Hopefully this week, because Byron Cowart was, he's a practice squad guy. He's not going to make a huge impact. So I want to see what that looks like. It's going to get lost because obviously the D line, pass rush, and the secondary are the 2 bigger topics. It cannot be understated, I think personally, how fucking good this linebacking core is. The fact that you don't even have to talk about them. TJ Edwards, look, I know people are going to be still upset about the Roquan trade. TJ Edwards is so much better of a fit in this specific defense than Roquan would have been. And you were able to get 2 guys for what they paid Roquan. And TJ Edwards, dude, he's so fucking good.
He's a tackling machine, man. Good. I mean, he's the Lance Briggs of this defense.
Yes. And it's just nice to see that you don't have to think about the linebackers literally at all. The secondary's locked in. Pass rush, I was happy with, but let's be real. The talent level is going to be switched up next week. Like it's not old ass DeAndre Hopkins at wide receiver 2. Right. It's not Will Levis back there making just mistake after mistake to the point where his head coach is saying, maybe we should just punt it. We probably would have won the game if we just punted on first down every time. Like that's fucking crazy. Yeah.
So can really my last point with the defense, because this is something that we've all said in some capacity, because these were the problems with Lovie Smith's defenses, except for the few years where it was like they were top 2 and they were getting 4-man organic rushes with Julius Peppers and blah, blah, blah. but they beat up on the average to bad teams. We didn't record beforehand. We were never worried about Will Levis. I don't think he's a good quarterback. This defense is going to eat bad quarterbacks alive. That's just what they do. But every single year, we saw the good quarterbacks, in the same sort of Tampa 2 type of defense. Granted, I think we blitz a little bit more in this under Eberflus, but we're going to see it. Did we really take this step forward to be a consistent top 5 unit where we can do this, in similar fashion of what the Bears did to Rodgers in 2018, where it was like, okay, this is just elite shit right here that we're seeing. Next week is going to be that first big test for this defense. And they can still win 10 games by beating up on bad defenses, but then you get to the playoffs and you just get exposed again. So I need, it's never going to be this dominant against CJ Stroud, but I need, especially situationally, that's where it worries me. Those 3rd and 15s, third and 12s, we can't have that. Good quarterbacks are going to expose you consistently. And at that point, that opens up the playbook, because now you can get a little frisky on 1st and 2nd down and take shots, because you're thinking, I can convert on 3rd and 8, 3rd and 10, 3rd and 12. So Next week is a huge test for this defense. Let's make no mistake.
I'm happy, and I know we want to potentially talk about it a little bit later in the week, just the game itself. But I'm happy that this game is here, because I think it's a great measuring stick game. I'm happy that the schedule worked out like this. Like, the first game isn't against the Packers. It's not the Vikings. It's not the Lions. It's let's play a team we're not totally used to. They're maybe not that good as some other, even though I think the Titans are a little bit better than people are giving them credit for. I think they're going to be a decent team this year. That being said, I like that it's just kind of get those first game nerves out of the way. All right, here's a national primetime game on the road against a really good team. Step up in competition at every single pit. Like, there is no position that the Texans are worse than the Titans. Like, I genuinely don't think that people would, like, at any level would be like, oh yeah, no, the Titans, man. I'm ready. I want to see what this team looks like week 2. I want to see if Caleb is maybe completing some of those more difficult throws. And last thing I want to say before we end this podcast, let's not get it twisted. Caleb had 95 yards passing, but there were some fucking dots that he was throwing around that football field, man. Like, you saw, and that's why I'm not necessarily, I'm not down on the box score, right? I'm not like, oh shit, like same old. You can't look at some of those throws Caleb was making and be like, oh, just Justin again. It's just Mitch again. Nah, come on, man. Some of those throws on the run to DJ Moore, Caleb's going to be fine. It might just take a little bit longer than we thought it would. And that's okay.
Yeah.
That's okay.
Listen, last point I want to make, because this guy may have been the MVP, and I don't think he's being talked about nearly enough. And like, people may laugh, but I'm dead ass serious. Torrey Taylor, holy fuck, what a punter that guy is. I feel like, obviously kickers and punters continues to get disrespected because this is a game amongst macho men, and these guys usually aren't so macho. But holy fuck, his ability to switch the field like that. I mean, some of these punts that are starting at our 25, 30, and they're getting into the opponent's 10. That dude, if we can get our shit together offensively and we can put together drives and not have to necessarily worry about it, but then you just have these few that sputter out and you're just immediately flipping position because of him. That kid, I mean, he just in terms of skill, he's the best punter in a Bears uniform in my life. Maybe Brad Maynard with the coffin punts, he was really good at like pinning people, but we're talking about a different level of leg strength here. The kid played. He played, Jackie.
It's a good use of a 4th round pick. It's a good use.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And I think it makes you feel a little bit better as well. That not every single drive has to end in points, even though that's something obviously you would like. One thing that I love that Eberflus said that a lot of people have kind of been running with, make sure every drive ends in a kick, whether that's a field goal or a punt, because that means you scored points or you didn't turn the ball over. And I love that. I love that, especially for a rookie quarterback. If that's something that Caleb's keeping in mind when he's making decisions on, should I throw this? Should I, protect the football is the most important thing. Don't hurt your team. And I really don't think Caleb put them in any bad positions. He didn't help them a ton, but he didn't put them in bad positions.
Right. There were no negative plays.
Right. Which except for that screen, but that's not his fault. And there really wasn't. It was just awkward. Like, I know people were like, throw the ball away. There wasn't a good.
He could even set his feet. Angle. That was tough. If he throws the ball away, he's throwing from an arm angle that Will Levis throws that pick six, that like under pitch hand. You just take my only complaint there is you just take the first sack. You just go down. You don't even try to get the play's dead. You have to know when the play's dead. So you lose, 5 instead of 9 or whatever.
Right. And Caleb will learn that, hopefully. Fingers crossed. Overall, I think it was a good start to the season. Obviously, I had a lot of fun. Just overall, that second half was desperately needed because I was in a bad mood, Frank. I was in a very bad mood. But I'm glad Bears football is back.
Yep.
Felt right. Felt right to win a game like that for sure.
Oh, 100%. I mean, it was so Bears. It was so Bears. I hope that, it was just a week delay of modernity. Is that the right word? Modernity? Just being modern.
Modernity?
I don't know what's the right word. Yeah. Hopefully we just delayed it by a week, but I'm ready for a modern NFL team that's fun to watch.
And let's get, look, you're talking about the defense. You hope they lock down. You hope they look special. Fuck that. I want to shoot out. No,
and listen. No, this is we're going to talk about it again. We're going to have a separate pod previewing the game. But make no mistake, the theme for this week is we're going to have to put up points. The Texans are not the
You're not
going
to win like this.
You're not going to win like this. We need splash plays. We need big plays. We need Caleb to come up big. And if we're going to win that game, it's going to be, I don't want to say like necessarily shootout fashion, but it's going to be high stakes chess here. And I'm excited for it. First test of the year.
Yep, I agree. Frankie, this was a ton of fun. Glad to be back with you to talk this season through. Glad Bears football is back. We really appreciate you guys listening. As always, feel free to like, subscribe, watch on YouTube, listen on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you're able to. Miller High Life, it's delicious, cold, refreshing after a Bears W. Give us that sponsorship.
It's also delicious after a loss, too. It helps you get over those. So either way.
Either way, baby. That's the name of this podcast. Either way. We appreciate you guys listening. We will talk to you a little bit later here. Bears, Texans. Here we go, Frankie.
For sure. Later, Jackie. Later, everybody.